Good morning, everyone. So, a lot of you have been asking for me to make a video on eating raw meat and just what I eat in a day in general. On a weekday, I wake up at around 4 a.m., which doesn't make filming in the morning very practical just because there is no lighting. But today, being a Sunday, I've let myself sleep in for a couple of hours. It's about 8:39 now. I'm about to eat my first meat meal. It's not the first thing that I have eaten though during the day, just because a couple of hours ago I swallowed a couple of raw eggs to hydrate myself first thing in the morning. I've got here some plain typical old muscle meat, so that's beef entrecote, ribeye, if you may. I've got some liver from a calf. I've got some lamb, these are lamb chops, and I've got some sardines marinated in lime juice overnight. I'm going to be eating all of this with some raw, unpasteurized butter. So eating fish can be an acquired taste, especially if you're eating it raw. It can be quite strong, but marinating it something like apple cider vinegar or lime juice overnight just makes it quite tasty actually. One thing I've realized while bouncing back and forth between, say, lightly seared meat to completely raw is that when I'm eating raw, I am more in tune with what my body is actually asking for in terms of nutrients and minerals. So when I'm eating lightly seared meat, lightly cooked meat, or even cooked meat in general, I won't really crave organ meats or fish as such. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't quite feel right eating just muscle meat all the time. But when I do switch to raw, I find that my appetite opens up every day to different things. So on one day I might be craving a bit of blood, on the other day I might be craving shellfish. Organs I try to eat at least once a week. And it will always be a different kind of organ, so this week it's liver. Although I did order some testicles and brains, but unfortunately they did get held up in transit and arrived here smelling not so very fresh. So I just had to get rid of them, unfortunately, but the liver stayed intact. I've had a couple of pieces yesterday and it's quite delicious, quite sweet. A lot of people say it doesn't really taste good because firstly it's cooked liver is just horrible. Keeping it raw, if you get it from an animal like a calf, for example, fresh, very healthy, can be very sweet, almost tastes like wine, which it does right now, red wine. So what am I doing here with the butter? And why the butter with every meal? Some of you have asked me if I just use it as a spread in general. Well, yes and no. And the butter serves a purpose in every meal. You see, the protein here, this is not random, right? Everything on this plate is here for a reason. The fish, just because I've been wanting to eat something minerally, and also for the omega-3s. But then you have the lamb chops here, and why I particularly include the lamb chops in every meal is just because they are very, very fatty, just for the fat. I've got in my organ meat here, so the liver, which is very rich in vitamin A, a bit of vitamin C and a lot of B vitamins. And then we have just plain old muscle meat, which is to fill up the remaining protein requirement that I have. So all these things are basically, it's not fuel, it's primarily building blocks, right? Primarily protein, except for the fat here on the lamb chops, of course, and micronutrients, of course, which is vitamins and minerals. But the fat is your fuel. So when I'm eating a meat meal, I make sure to get enough fat as possible so that the protein is not converted into a fuel and that my body actually uses it for building, while making sure the fat is used as fuel. I always take a mouthful of butter with the meat, mix it in, chew it. The thing with raw meat is that it is in many ways alive. So we have the enzymes that are still intact, provided it's not frozen. You have the bacteria on it, which is all very helpful for digestion and overall health. Usually after a good meal, I'll notice a difference in my color, my energy. It's just like my mood improves after a meat meal. And I eat typically only 2 of these meals during the day, so the next one will probably be afternoon or in the evening. But besides these, I'll snack on some raw eggs, which also help me with hydration. And in the summer, a lot of vegetable juices, because water is not really hydrating at all. All water makes you do is feel thirsty again in a few minutes and piss out all your minerals. It's never really helped me, and I think I grew more conscious of this after switching to a raw meat diet 3 years ago. So the next thing I will show you is just how I make my vegetable juices, but it's just the vegetable juices that I sip on the entire day for hydration, apart from the raw eggs, and I eat my meat meal when I'm hungry next, which is, like I said, in the evening. So how much meat do I generally eat in a day? It depends. If I'm eating cooked, I find that interestingly I can go up to more than 1 kilo of meat a day, almost 2 kilos. But if I'm eating raw, it's half that. So I would say anywhere between half kilo to about 600, 650, maybe maximum 700 grams, but rarely ever reaches that high. And yeah, I just tend to feel satisfied on very little. How do I know that I'm full? Well, like now, I'm not really stuffed. I don't feel any sort of space being occupied in my stomach, but I'm just kind of bored of eating now. So when you start a meal, you know you're really hungry when the meat looks appetizing. You start fantasizing about the meat. Then after you've taken a few bites, after like 5-10 minutes, you realize that it's just not interesting anymore and you would rather go on and do other things. That's when you know you've kind of eaten as much as you want to eat.